Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Holly Hall. I'm the MD of the MACH Alliance, and we are here at the MACH Haus in New York on our third day. It's been pretty epic. I think we've run about 20 sessions. We've still got a handful of amazing things to happen today though, and this is one of them. So we're going to be talking all things personalization. I've been told by the panelists, to be fair, that I have the holy grail of personalization on stage right now. So in that we've got an SI, we've got search, content, front end. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Ellie.
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of a company called Constructor. We do product discovery for large e-commerce companies. So we work with places like Sephora, Petco, American Eagle. And what we do for them is when a shopper goes onto their website, whether they're searching for something or they're browsing for something or they're seeing recommendations or they're filling in a quiz, anywhere that they can be showing them products, our job is making sure the products that the shopper sees are personalized to them, they're attractive to them, and most importantly, they optimize for the business KPI the retailer most cares about.
Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan Martino. I'm VP of DXP Solutions at TA Digital. We are an agency as part of the Omnicom family of companies. We do DXP, MACH, strategy, design, implementation activities. Been trying to personalize websites since 1999, so I've been at this for a little while. But yeah, excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Alan Anderson. I'm the Transformation Strategy and Partner Alliances Lead at Content.ai. Content.ai is a headless content management platform that allows customers to manage their content across all the different touch points that they use to engage with their customers.
Hello, I'm Tyson Graham. I'm head of sales at View Storefront. We're a front-end as a service, a composable front-end as a service. So we give the UI, the integrations, and infrastructure to CTOs and their teams to make the shift to composable commerce and kind of pull the experience together.
Perfect. So the holy grail, right?
The holy grail.
No pressure.
So if you, and I'm sure everyone's talked to lots of retailers over the last few days, if you ask them what they're going to be, what's most important, what they're going to be investing in over the next year, they say personalization every time, right? So when they say personalization, what do you think's in their head? What's their ambition here? What do they want to achieve? And I'll go to Ellie. We'll start down the line.
Yeah. So to me, it's a number of things. It's making it a digital home. So giving a digital home to the user, somewhere where, at least the way that I think about it, it's like when you compare the personalization that used to exist in the past, where it would be like you look at a pair of pants somewhere and it follows you around the entire internet everywhere that you don't want it to follow you. Like that's kind of the bad old days. And what we're trying to get to, and what I think retailers realize is important, is you want your website to feel much more like the experience somebody gives on like a Spotify or a Netflix, right? You specifically want those services to know more about you as a user so that they give you better service. And through giving you that better service, you want to come back to them more often, right? Like I'll come back to Netflix all the time at this point because I feel like it really gets me and it knows me. And I think that something like that it's starting to exist in retail. It's still not there yet, but I think that's kind of, I'll use the word holy grail because now it's stuck in my head, but that's the holy grail. You make somebody feel like your website is, your retail website is similar to a Netflix or a Spotify.
Yeah, the one thing I see the retailers want to do is really, it's about getting the right product to the right person at the right time. You only have so much opportunity to capture that customer. There's a lot of options out there. So you want to make sure when they hit the homepage or hit the landing page or hit your experience, they're getting the things they want. And I think that's key. How you do that, there's so many different ways to do that, but ultimately it's, if you can get that right product in front of the customer, you're going to capture that transaction.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're seeing a lot is actually more around how they build that experience online and offline. We'll probably talk about that later, but it's, especially with COVID changed how retailers looked at relationships, because a lot with luxury high-end brands, personalization was how you shopped in store, the smell, the touch, the tactile feel. And then all of a sudden, you lost that in-store experience completely and had to start to recreate that. So following a pair of pants around the internet, that's changed. Now it's how do we actually personalize the experience, how we personalize in shop. So it's quite a nice market to be in, I think, and it's trying to capture that in-store personalization and kind of that personalization experience of it being unique to you.
Yeah, and I think when you asked the question, the first word that popped into my head was conversion around personalization. Obviously, we say personalization, but we want experiences that convert. And so I couldn't agree more with what's been said here, right product, right time, sort of Ellie's version of the Holy Grail. I always try to think about it from a cause and effect perspective of that's sort of the output, the outcome. And where I see sort of the limitations of getting there is usually from an architecture perspective. So, composable architecture is the most customer-centric architecture because it allows you the optionality, if you put it together right, to be pulling in innovative services more and more all the time and keeping the experience intact. So.
I think Tyson makes an important point. Like the measuring of it is incredibly important, and it's one of the beautiful things about MACH that you're not stuck to a monolith. So you can switch in these different vendors and see all of these beautiful words that they're telling you about personalization and AI. Like, do they actually convert into something? Like, is it measurable? Can you actually figure out that this personalization that you think is benefiting your customers, it actually is, and it's leading to more purchases and it's leading them coming back more often?
Yeah, I think that really adds to that kind of feel of what's next. New technologies emerge, especially within a Mac ecosystem, and building that composable architecture that allows you to take one platform out or augment it with another to deliver new experiences really allows you organizations to pivot in a way that those on a monolithic stack just don't have that agility to move and really kind of enable and use.
So Dan, from a sort of systems integrator's perspective, you're sort of agnostic. Like, how does MACH do? The other three have shared why they think MACH is right for personalization and why it's going to bring you deliver. Like, from your perspective, how are you talking to your customers about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the technology's great, and all these technologies can deliver on personalization, but ultimately to succeed in personalization, you have to establish a program, right? The technology, like one of the things I've always, when I talk to customers, half the time they can't even get enough content through the pipeline to handle a single persona. So now you're going to tell me I have to get 6 versions of that content through. That's one challenge. The other thing is when you have all these different technologies in play, each is measuring an event maybe a little differently. He sees a conversion, he sees a conversion, he sees a conversion, she sees a, all the different technologies see a conversion, but they may measure it differently. They may measure propensity differently. So you have to have a general strategy. You have to understand all the techs and how they behave. And then when you want to affect outcome, you really have to have a plan that says, if I have a category affinity plan, how does that work across search? How does that work across recommendations? How does that work with content? And how do those 3, 4, 5 different technologies work together to give me the outcome I want? Then I got to measure and test, right? Because I might get the outcome this week, and next week it goes away. So I got to continually test and then feed that back into the program. So if you don't establish that personalization program, you won't get the value out of the various technologies, and you just won't see the benefit and the bottom line benefit.
Yeah. Anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's a huge thing we're seeing as a blocker, that rise of the data scientist. So as you quite rightly say, we all have different touch points, we all have different content delivered by API, but it's getting someone to understand, what a conversion is and figure out what is the consistency of conversions. A is A and B is B, but then taking that data and using that insight to actually deliver, the growth that the organization is looking to go for.
And always, it's like we used to talk about this years ago. It was your personalization idea was kind of whoever had the highest title, they come up with an idea, you go do it, and who knows if it works, right? And then you have, personalization is a huge umbrella of capability from, flipping the products on a page based on category affinity to testing and stuff. And so a lot of it is about, I have a theory, I have a hypothesis, let me go try it out, let me test it, and it may fail, And that's good. I learned something new. Red jeans don't work, right? And so, having that kind of program in place. Yeah, why wouldn't red jeans work? Why did I think of red jeans? I don't know. But again, like having that program in place so you can take that feedback and then build the next campaign or test accordingly.
I was just going to add one more point too. I think that's a brilliant point, because we come from more of the technology side of things, and everyone's always looking at new technologies. But if the program's not there, and I would say another P, the philosophy of focusing on customer experience first and then working backwards, to actually pull in those technologies to fulfill on it, you're probably not going to get anywhere.
One of the first questions that we'll often ask a customer is, what does success look like? Because it might be different for different companies. Like a lot of us in the MACH space, we're working with larger customers, with enterprise companies, and for one company, it might literally just be conversions. For somebody else though, like maybe they don't want to sell more loss leaders. Like maybe it's more about revenue for them, and if they sell fewer products but they get more revenue, they're still happy.
Yep.
Maybe for somebody else, they've got a new category that they really want to take off. And even if they sell less overall, if you can push more things from that category because it's strategically important, that's what you want to do. And so I think to Dan's point, like you have that program, you have an idea of what that success looks like, and you make sure that the technology works for you. The technology, I think an important point for anybody who's using MACH is that like it's there to serve you, but you need to tell it what you want it to do. Like if they're not asking you, if the technology is just like, hey, you just put it on your website and it'll be great, it'll be fantastic, like it's probably not enterprise ready. Like you probably want to have that conversation, you want to figure out what success looks like together, and then make sure that you're heading towards, you're optimizing for it.
So to that end, who's doing it well? Have you got any good examples of that, like there's a clear vision and objective, and then how they achieve that, and or maybe not doing it so well as well?
I think we're in a really kind of unique position. A lot of organizations are still going through that process of and that journey of going from monolith to composable. And there's a lot of talk around customer-led transformation and things, but realistically, by taking out the monolith, they're given access to the data around customers, around CDPs and data, and their products like they never have been able to do before. And I think we're only scratching the surface of where this is going to go as a market. People are dipping their toes in, and it's really basic stuff. But I think as this matures and they get that data to use the insights that you're talking about and actually understand what they've got, it's really going to the power forward, I think.
Yeah, I think machine learning and AI is really going to help because like the limiting factors, I talked about content previously, that's a limiting factor. And that's where product catalog is such a key place to personalize, because typically you have a big catalog to work with. But also it's the manual part of personalization. Like I wasn't joking, in '99 we built rules out, right, in ATG Dynamo, and if this then this, and now you have a machine figuring those things out for you and being able to self-test and learn and optimize and make that process more efficient. I think you'll see the process improve significantly. I often see less about who's doing well with personalization, but who's not doing well, because there are a couple brands I go to, and I won't name names, but I go all the time. I buy this type of thing all the time. I give you my username and password all the time, and I still see the wrong T-shirts or the wrong type. And so for me, it's more, I see who doesn't do it well.
Yeah,
because if you do it well, it's kind of seamless. It was just like, I bought that, I'm done, and I move on.
We've got a little bit from both sides, well, at least I'm noticing. So like from the folks that do it really well, one that always comes to the top of my head is Sephora. They constantly win personalization awards. They've got a brilliant team. We're lucky to get to work with them just on the product discovery component of it. But one thing that I constantly notice with them is they always push us to be better. Like they're always on the side of innovation. It's never, you're just done with personalization. It's like, okay, we got that 1%, 2% revenue lift. Like, what's the next thing that we can do? How do we get the next 1 to 2%?
What are you doing for me next?
Exactly. And it's not a one size fits all is I think another thing that they realize. Like the sort of personalization that might work for a grocery store might not be the exact same thing that works for them. And so there's changes to the algorithm that involves, and that involves a whole lot of A/B testing and a whole lot of trial and error and a very clear idea of not just what success looks like for their business, but what does success look like for their customers, and what kind of personalization is going to make them happy, what kind is going to make them keep coming back. From the other side of it, like the places that I see it doing it poorly, it feels like it's personalization for personalization's sake, if that makes sense. So like maybe you say, okay, somebody bought one pair of green pants before, and so like now every single thing on the website they see is green. And it's like, that might demo well, maybe it impresses somebody in a board meeting, but like I don't see anybody here wearing just like one shade of clothing, On the other end, you might say like, okay, because somebody bought one thing in store, like every single time that they search for something that should potentially match that thing, like you always put it on top. It's one of those things that makes sense when you kind of think about it, but at least in the A/B test that we've run personally, like if somebody's searching very generically, they probably don't want the thing that they bought last time. If they wanted it, they would have searched for it specifically. They're looking to explore more. And so like just having the personalization in the places where it really actually does something, instead of just having it everywhere because personalization equals good or whatever, somebody told you. Like that's a really important key element for retailers to realize, because it's what benefits users.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other? I've got Sephora. I didn't get any other names. No one's willing to name names.
I think there's a really interesting thing. Like the cost, the market, and the cost to build into this. There's a lot of cost in it, not just the platforms, but also the manpower, the data, and everything. And what we're seeing is that a lot of organizations, especially in retailers, they're looking at their margins, and to shift the needle 1 point in that kind of customer side of personalization is quite hard. So we're seeing more organizations like where they can shift the needle more points, but in slightly less traditional ways. So looking at customer service, their contact experience, the returns experience. So how can you personalize that experience in different areas to shift that needle 3 or 4 points? Because it's not so much about making more profit on the product that you sell and selling it, but actually retaining that profit once you actually serve it and kind of have the return.
So to that point, the bricks and mortar thing, how do you bring in the store, like the physical space, and merge the online and physical together, and what does that mean for personalization, and what are the opportunities that opens up?
So maybe there's lots of organizations trying to jump really into this. Like I said earlier, is how do we as a high scale retailer or fashion brand give that same experience? I really don't want to name names, but they're really struggling to do that. But we're actually seeing organizations dipping their toe, and I think it's not so much around doing personalization, but actually getting buy-in. Retail always, and bricks and mortar, always control the majority of the budget. And as much as digital wants to dip into that budget, it's very hard. So we're seeing organizations do wee small things to prove the power of digital in a non-digital environment. QR codes is a great example. Reducing supply chain costs by putting a QR code on a label on something that changes a lot. Shows how digital can do something really well, but reduce cost.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other big thing is you see is the data, right? Bringing the data from the store together with data and digital. So at least I know my customer, God, this is an old term from a 360-degree view, but it's like if I can bring those things together, I can start to see like, hey, this is what they buy in store, they're coming online, I can use that information, I can use their digital experience to help tailor the in-store experience. And then there's so many more digital touch points, even in the store, whether it's with an app, whether it's signage eventually, things like that. So bringing that data together can really help bring those experiences together and make it more seamless between your physical and your digital.
Yeah, I think Dan hits on a huge point, because everybody wants to, and I think we've heard it on earlier panels, everybody wants to innovate, everybody wants to move fast, everybody wants to personalize, but actually getting the architecture in place that allows that to happen, getting that philosophy, but then also the technology there so that data can really empower those experiences in store and online. So we have a really interesting use case with PriceSmart, which is kind of like the Costco of Latin America. And they've got some really interesting situations down there. Most of their clubs are in like Honduras, Costa Rica, and they're even wiring into their customer journey things like, hey, there's a hurricane coming. So you should get ready for that, and you should come get supplies for that. And so they have all these like really thoughtful things about regional stuff as well, but none of that would be possible without having the right architecture there to be able to tie into all those services.
I think there's two important things that provide balance to each other, and I think everybody here is kind of hitting upon them at least a little bit. From the one side, one of the beautiful things about MACH is that you have these APIs that are decoupled from a front end, from something specific that you're getting that information from, and so you can start getting feedback from users across all of these different channels that they're shopping on. Whether it's in store, whether it's on their mobile phone, whether it's on their desktop, whatever it's going to be in the future as well. And so having APIs that are flexible enough to get all that information, to be able to take it in, that's kind of the first step. If you can't take in the offline data, then you're not going to be able to do anything with it.
And then by being API based, you have the ability to deliver that personalized content to multiple endpoints, right? So I can personalize a message to a cash machine, to an app, to a website, to a sign. So when you decouple the presentation from the actual personal data, because ultimately, it's a package of data you're personalizing, you'll wrap it with a presentation. Being able to do that across, or do it differently per touch point, but it's the same source. So I don't have one system serving one channel and another system serving another channel, and I got to figure out how to make those things somewhat work together. It can be one system serving all channels.
Exactly.
Making that a seamless experience.
What provides balance to it, at least in my opinion, is exactly what Dan was saying earlier in terms of the program. Like with MACH, you kind of get an abundance of riches. You can do all of these different things. You maybe don't want to do all of them at once, right? Like you want to have the iteration and figure out like, okay, what's going to give you the most value to start with? You do that first. Maybe that's not taking in every single piece of data from like the store that one person shops at. Maybe that's taking in data from your app or taking in data from the website first. And you see like, okay, how does that do in terms of personalization? What does that get me? You've got a baseline now. Okay, now you add on something else to it. Maybe now you say, okay, now I'm going to take in data from offline and I'm going to apply that to what I get online as well. The APIs were always there. You could have done it in any order you wanted to, but having that program, having that strategy of this is the order that I'm going to do it in because I think that's going to lead to the best experiences fastest for my users, that's incredibly important. It's a balance.
And I think you get to move things in and out too. So back to your point of, everything's a test, kind of moving into that philosophy. If you don't have MACH technology, it's pretty scary, frankly, because how are you going to make a mistake and fail well and then move something in based on that test?
When you do fail, you want to learn from that quickly and get it out of there. You don't want the failure to sit on the site for 2 weeks while you're trying to change that out. So failure is good if you learn from it quickly and get the failure out of there quickly.
Exactly.
So I'd be interested to know where you think we are on this journey. To me, it sounds like you're all saying there's so much more to come. So like 1 to 10, where are we on our kind of journey of personalization? You think in the market in general, like what are we going to see?
The interesting thing to me in personalization is you bring Chat GPT and personalization together now, because again, it gets to that. Someone was doing an experiment. I was flying out here yesterday and they were getting different PowerPoints through Chat GPT, but as I said, the challenge, I have 6 personas. I might want to try 6 different elements of content. Now I tell a machine, hey, write it in this tone, write it in this tone, write it in this tone. Now I got 6 pieces of content in whatever amount of time it takes. I can put it out there. I can add, with learning systems around content and images and being able to automate that process and create it quickly, I think that'll open up a ton, because as I said, we have a ton of products to personalize and we can do it there, but it's the content side that is lacking because of the human element. And now with things like AI, maybe suddenly you may let the machine write the content for you and get it out there quickly. And I think that'll be a big advance for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Look, we see a lot of long-form content being created and trying to power these mechanisms, which just doesn't work. And the content model for us, obviously being a content management platform, is key to success. But what we're now starting to see is that kind of shift to smaller, bite-sized chunk of content that can be used anywhere.
Yeah.
We use the terminology format free. But to your point, we don't have to build 6 personas and then struggle to maintain those, because those 6 personas then get, as you said, Dan, earlier, it doesn't personalize enough to that individual. because you've created a persona, but it doesn't talk to the individual. And I think that is where, I think if you look at on a scale of 1 to 10, I think we're 5. I think we're at that point where we're transitioning from personas-driven content to a personalized experience, which is delivering the content that you want in the way that structure you want. So the device you want, in the language you want, or not language, it's just touch or tactile or anything it needs to be. I think that's where we're going to see the market pivot. And I think that we're seeing monoliths, so who's not doing well. Monolithic tech doesn't allow you to pivot to that model as well because of that coupled architecture. And that's where the kind of the MACH architecture principles really come into play for organizations.
I think most brands are probably at about a 1, if I'm being honest.
I was gonna say.
Like, most of the places that I go online to shop, I don't really see or feel any personalization. I think in terms of the best, this is just my opinion, but I don't think anybody's ever going to get to a 10 because what a 10 means is always changing. Like, this is a problem that's never going to be fully solved.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things about it personally, because like I'm never going to get bored doing this.
It's a 10 is predicting the future, predicting what you want, rather than because everything we do today is based on what you did, right? So maybe the 10 is predicting.
Yeah, exactly.
The experience you want. I don't know, but yeah, I agree. It's never done. It'll never be perfect. Once you think you've got it right, your customers will tell you they want it differently. So you're never going to get to perfect.
Exactly. 2 interesting areas that I do think are going to start evolving that will help get people along that sliding scale. So one of them is I don't think that nearly enough companies ask users for explicit feedback to personalize based on. Right now, so much of it is done implicitly. And like, if I'm, let's say, like a gluten-free shopper or something like that, like I want my grocery store to know that. Like, I don't want to see the non-gluten-free stuff because I'm not going to buy it anyways. If I want organic stuff, like I want my grocery store to know that. I wish they would just ask me so I could tell them. And so having something like a quiz or like, I don't know, just something that lets me make the website my digital home, that would be incredibly beneficial for me as a user. It would be incredibly beneficial for the business.
There's an interesting tension between privacy and what customers want. And I've read articles about this where, people say they want privacy, they really don't, because they understand the value of if I give somebody this information, they'll be able to tailor things the way I want it. But you do have that tension of like, if you explicitly ask for information, is the customer going to give it? Now they're worried about privacy and stuff like that. So that I always think about that, like, man, those things are fighting against each other to get what you want. Like
it's nice though from the other side because like they don't have to give it to you. Like it's completely their choice. It's one of the few places that it's literally like I think the word I've heard used for it is zero-party data. Like it's coming from the customer because they want you to know about this as a business. I'll just say quickly one other thing. Like the other thing that I think is really going to be interesting in personalization that I haven't seen really anywhere, but I'm hoping that we start seeing is you don't really see any personalization within UIs yet. Like you'll see maybe like different products coming back for different people, but if one person is maybe a little bit far-sighted or something like that, they can't see things quite as well. Should they have the exact same size images as everybody else? I don't know, maybe they shouldn't. I haven't really seen something like that anywhere.
Talk to my design team. They'll tell you, no, the button has to be this way every. All
right, skip over this part for the design team. Yeah, design team, please don't.
This is another for another.
Designers, go away.
So, last question then, I guess. So, I'd love to know one thing you're super excited about for the next, let's say, 12 months, and one piece of advice that you would give to retailers, and keep it Vox Poppy.
I can go
Go on,
first.
Ellie, start.
Sorry, I feel like
Kick
I've been
us off.
talking too much. I'd say measure what matters. Like, don't just do personalization for personalization's sake. Have a very clear idea of what success looks like, and then measure it. Don't trust the vendor. I mean, I'd love it if you trusted me, but I think that you should make me prove it. Like as a vendor, anything that I say to you, like make me prove it, test it, run an A/B test, whatever you need to do to verify that you're actually getting the benefit out of the personalization that you were hoping to get.
Yeah. From the excitement standpoint, I think ChatGPT and these advanced language models will be really interesting. I'm interested to see where that goes. The advice I'd give quickly is like, don't fear failure. Failure is learning. When you're in the personalization space, if I run a personalization campaign and I get nothing out of it, that is success. If I measure it, if I knew what I wanted to do, if I had a good theory, if I had a good experiment, you've succeeded. Move on, learn, do the next thing. So don't fear failure.
Yeah, and I think it's actually look at the business problem that you're trying to solve. A lot of people will follow the crowd because company X is doing it, we must do that. Look at the business problem that's facing your organization and really tailor that there. And I think, yeah, the same experience that you guys have had as well. It's just really that. But from us personally at Content AI, it's more a case of get your content model right, your tagging strategy, because without that, all the things that we're talking about today just won't be possible because you won't have the tools at the endpoint to work with it.
Perfect. Tyson?
I'll stay on the same thread of advice would be really fight the temptation to get obsessed with the technology first and focus on the ideal customer experience, because composable architecture is a huge opportunity to innovate. So I see some people that are very excited about the shift to composable, what an opportunity to innovate. You see other brands, they're kind of debilitated by it. The wind's been taken out of them. It seems like a task. So I think it's a great opportunity, and take it as that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. That was a brilliant kind of first step into personalization. I would certainly say if you are looking to know more, to go to the MACH Alliance community, give any of these guys a shout. I'm sure they'd be very happy to speak to you. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.